talking about patterning your after pendulum. Work with timing the pendulum so you can ball as your pendulum is moving upward to give you that as the pendulum is on its way upward, you're going to be thinking about working with your grip and wrist positioning so that this top edge is slightly leading the bottom edge so your strings are down. So as you're catching the ball on the way up out of this pendulum, your strings will be down and the result will be topspin. You can actually hear that brush as I'm moving my racket up and keeping my strings here, tilted slightly forward. Okay. So that's the wrist. Racket's going to fall down, go up into the ball with the strings slightly hooded, brushing up, always catching the ball on the way up. Now, the only thing you're working with in terms of catching the ball on the way up is where you're positioning the ball. If you position the ball behind you, your pendulum will always be on the way down and you'll be slamming the ball into the ground. Or what you're doing, and what most people do subconsciously, as you're hitting the ball on the way down, you compensate for that by scooping underneath it. The problem with that is that the ball is spinning away from the court. So you're going to be making more net errors or more long errors that way. Other important things here in terms of what you're doing with your body, and that's what we have to get into now. That was more the physics of the thing. How do you accomplish that? Well, first of all, you have to realize if you keep your body sideways the whole way, that your arm is only going to extend out towards your target so much before it starts wrapping around your body. So it's going to be critical to get the hips open so that my arm has a nice free natural path towards the target and up the back of the ball for the topspin. Right? So that's what we're going to work with first of all here, and here's how we're going to learn how to do this. We're going to move in front here. So just work with me here with this for now. We're just going to work with the pendulum itself only. Start your racket here. You swing your arm and pattern it just like this. Don't force your arm to swing like a pendulum, but accommodate it in swinging like a pendulum. In other words, relax it enough so that it swings on its own. So you got potential energy, kinetic energy, potential energy, kinetic energy. You just swing it back. Okay. Really relax. Feel like you're swinging from the collarbone, from the end of your collarbone. Right. Okay. That's just very generally how the arm should feel. Again, very generally. Now and down. Don't worry about turning yet. Let's just get the lower body synchronized with the upper body. So you're going down, up, and down. So you're working with accommodating the physics of the stroke instead of creating the physics with your muscles. You're accommodating the pendulum with your lower body. Okay. Is that when you get your knees synchronized with what your upper body's doing, that's the key to turning. Because as you can see here with both knees bent, just by straightening out my left knee, that opens my hips up. That's my mechanism for opening my hips up. Again, opening the hips up is so important because that is what allows your arm to go out towards the target. Okay? Now, watch. It's not just a matter of lifting only, though, because if you keep this left toe pointed out that way, it still makes it real hard to turn, so we're going to be pivoting as well. There you go. So that front foot, just like you're putting out a cigarette butt. Here, and let it pivot. Try it again. Stop right there. There you go. Do it again. That was good. You need to stop. No.
Let me see you do it, Ted. And again. And again.
Absolutely critical that when you're done with the shot that your left knee be straight, because that, again, is the mechanism for having a gentle hip turn. It's the straightening and pivoting of the left knee. Again, if you keep your knees bent and force your turn, you're going to get in more trouble than if you didn't turn at all, because you'd just be jerking the arm off of the path towards the target. Okay? So let's give that a shot here. All I'm going to do now is bounce the ball for you. Let me hit just a couple more to give you the overall picture again. You're going to be starting like this. I'll bounce the ball for you. And when you're done with the shot, we're going to look at two things. Where your left toe is pointing should be up at the net. See how it's straightened out? And my back foot is up on the toe with the sole of the foot at the curtain. So toe at the net. Two important things when you're done with your follow-through to make sure that you've turned your hips, got them out of the way so your arm can travel at the target. You want to take a look at your left toe pointing at the net and the sole of the right foot pointing back at the back fence for the curtain in this case. And so this is exactly how you should be when you're done. This straight. So try it again. Now you're starting your arm just a little too high there. And if you're really, really muscling, right, try to relax and let the pendulum do its own work. Try it again. head down. Yeah. Good. That was your best one. So start it down a little lower. Right, Glenn was doing the same thing. Let's hold it here and see where your feet are. Stop. Okay. So notice what you're doing here. You're trying. It's almost like building a structure from the roof down. In other words, you're turning up here. You're forcing your turn, your upper body turn, and that's making your lower body turn. See, it should be the other way around. My lower body should be turning first, and then now look where my upper body is. My upper body then comes through. It does me no good to do this because the damage has already been done, regardless of how much I turn down here. Okay? So the key, what we're going to do now, is work with stepping, bend, lift, pivot. And the whole idea here with this step, bend, lift, pivot is that it's a very natural motion, but very relevant to the stroke. Because every time when you walk, you bend and you lift, you bend and you lift. You've been doing this your whole life. Very natural motion. So here's what it's going to be like. That was great there. That was great. Step, bend, lift. So it's a little different than walking, because when you walk, you don't lift and pivot your foot out 90 degrees to where you're walking to. But that's the only way that it's different. Otherwise, it's completely the same. So it's step, bend, lift, pivot. The hips got to get out of the way before the shoulders. Okay? All right, so we're going to start your feet together. Start the feet together, step, bend, lift, pivot. Put it, yeah, tie it together a little bit more, not so it's a step, and then do it. It's more step, bend, lift, pivot. All right. Step, bend, lift, pivot. There, that's it. Okay, let's give that a whirl. So you're giving a lot of extra oomph. Just try this a second. Just go like this. Just let it pendulum back and forth. Now see, even there, you see, you're giving it all kinds of. Just let it go on its own. The whole point of this is, when you define your center of gravity as this, and you keep it in one spot, look how natural and consistent this pendulum is every time. And when you start moving it, okay, and start jerking it around, your pendulum becomes varied every time. And it's the same thing that you're doing with your body. If you move your center of gravity around, you're making this pendulum go all over the place the more you move your head and your body, okay? So the idea is to keep a still center and rotate around that center, keep your head back. See, my head's pulling away from where the racket's going, just as if I'm doing this with the pendulum. Now watch, I'm going to try to accelerate the racket in that direction and upward. Notice I pull back away from where the pendulum's going. Okay? Pull back, and that's what's happening with my head. As my pendulum is going forward, as my pendulum goes forward, my head stays back. Okay? Like I'm pushing, I want to be pushing away from where I'm hitting, not following along with it and moving my center of gravity and causing variations in the pendulum. Okay? So the whole point of all that is to just do it a little bit more naturally, if you will, in terms of not trying to, muscle it, shoulder, like you. Okay, so basically, is that you're catching the ball as your racket is on its way upward, and secondly, that your strings are slightly tilted in that direction. Those are the two things you're always working with to get topspin. Catching the ball on the way up and keeping the top edge of the racket ever so slightly in front of the bottom edge. Briefly about how to control wide errors, again, in addition to net errors and long errors. And what you're working with here when you're talking about wide errors is what you're doing with your body in terms of turning too much and throwing the wrist. So there's going to be two things that we're going to cover right now before we hit a few more balls. The whole idea here in controlling wide errors is not to get the upper body to force around. You notice how early my left arm's coming over here, and that the racket is just going to follow across, and obviously this is going to cause you to hit the ball wide. So you want to keep the arms together and keep your head down on where the ball was after you hit the ball. See, it's this instead of moving the head around. Again, you have to realize that all these muscles in your neck are connected into your shoulders. And when you move your head around, okay, you're going to move your shoulders around. When you move your shoulders around, you're going to be taking the ball the path to the target. Okay, so keep the head still, number one, for controlling wide errors. And number two, keep your arms moving together, so it's more like this. My arms move together, and my head stayed down on where the ball was. Okay, so to control wide errors, you need to work with what your shoulders are doing in terms of not jerking around with it, and to not jerk around with it with your head and or your shoulders and left arm moving too early. You want to keep your hands together so that your arms and shoulders move in sync with each other, and keep your head still down on where the ball was so that you're not using these neck muscles to pull your shoulders around too early. All right, a real important part of learning is to take a look at your follow through, because that's an indication of what your stroke was doing at the time. So in other words, if you follow through and you're like this, well, it's real obvious that you jerked your left arm way too early and moved your head perhaps. So let's take a look at your follow through. Hold it there. Okay, hold it. Let's go ahead. Hold it as best that you can. All right. Put your head, your chin right over there. There you go. Just like that. So you've done two things. If you follow through like this, you know you've done two things real well. You kept your head down on where the ball was. You kept your left hand and your right hand moving together. So this will help you really to decrease your wide errors when you do those two things. Back in here a little bit, and this is real common. When the ball's bounced, when the ball's out in front here, and a lot of people do this, move your head down at the ball. Move your head to, when you step in, there's a tendency to move your head down. And what that does is that drives your pendulum down. See, just like I can show here. If I'm going like this, let's say I'm accelerating my racket in that direction. If I move my head back and forth with my center of gravity, notice how that flattens out the pendulum. So it's going to be much harder to lift the ball when you're moving your head forward. Everything's going downward. So even though you're stepping in here, you still want to keep your head back. Notice where my head is going to stay even as I step in. See, my head stays back. Even though, give it another shot. Clap when you're...
And again. Hands together. See, my head is staying back. Even though I'm transferring my weight forward, my head still stays back. Once you give that... That's it. Pivot on your left foot, you're all set. Pivot on your left foot, keep your head back. But reach and clap, reach and clap. Don't let your arms drop and clap. There, all right. The idea is so much just to swing and then put it up there so it looks pretty. Okay. The idea is to swing them together. Swing them together so you control your shoulders. Again, this whole thing, as far as moving with your left arm along with your right arm, is so you have a mechanism for controlling what your shoulders are doing. Instead of thinking directly about what your shoulders are doing and driving yourself crazy, because it's very hard to think, oh, turn my shoulders at the right time and so forth. Just keep your left hand here and keep your arms together, and the shoulders will take care of themselves. So even though at first it might seem like a real kind of a tedious type of a thing to do, in fact, it makes things easier for you because you don't have to do them yourself. You have just like a mechanism for turning your hips is working with the feet and the legs. Right? So you don't have to worry about, am I turning my hips? Am I turning my hips? Well, you don't have to worry about that as long as you're working with your legs. And this is an easy thing to feel, like I showed before. It's just like walking and lifting, except you're walking and lifting and pivoting. So you have a natural mechanism here, same thing. Arms together. That's your mechanism for taking care of your shoulders. All right, take your back there and reach with both hands. Reach with both hands. Your hip. Even if you ad-lib it at the end, you're better off ad-libbing it than not doing it at all. Okay, so even if it's not perfect, at least. Okay, so let's just add one more thing there. Instead of bringing your bicep up to your right ear, let's drive the shoulder underneath your chin. See? So it's instead of this,
Like a golf swing.
instead of, yes, exactly. Instead of this, it's going to be this. Very similar, except when you do it this way, your center of gravity is going to stay in one spot, and you're not going to be using these neck muscles to horse your shoulders around too early. Footwork's very important to being able to implement these things that I'm showing you, because usually the most common thing that people do is run to the ball as fast as they can get there and stop and get foot dead. Right? The feet stop, and when the feet stop, you won't be able to start your stroke from the legs up like we talked about is so important. So it's a lot better to move to the ball more like this and get there just in time so that you're flowing into the shot, keeping your feet together as if they're tied together with the shoelace. Feet together, sliding, and working like that instead of see what I mean? So I'm sure you see that, but let's try it without a ball and see how it goes. Stand about right in there. Okay. Now your first move is here. Slide in. Right. That's fine. That's fine. Let's do it again. Not perfect, but that's a good start. Okay. Now try to only take your racket back once. What you kind of do, you kind of go turn, and then move. Right. Turn. Oh, now move. And this again. Did you feel how you took it back again? Okay. That's real good with the feet, though. It's good with the feet. Here, turn. Now leave it there. Leave it there. There we go. There you go. Okay. Try it again. At least 3 or 4 more times, at least. Ready? Back. Now leave it there. Now flow and lift. There you go. Now keep your hands together. Keep your hands together when you hit. Ready? 1. Your hand wasn't up there. You got to keep reaching with your hand. Work with these mechanisms. Work with the mechanisms, and then you won't have to worry about all these different things. Up and reach. There you go. That looked good. One more, Frank. One more. Okay, that was your first really, really good one in terms of doing a lot of things well. 1 and 2. Great. There, see? The whole key, boom, biggest key for you and for most people, because they're very upper body oriented, is to work with the left toe and this left leg action. When you're done with your shots, your left toe, 99 times out of 100 here, is pointing off at this wall, and it's really, really hard for you to turn from the waist, so all your turn is coming from the upper body, and you're really off balance. So the only thing I can really say to focus on here is that pivot. Let's just focus on that one thing. Is where is your front foot pointing when you're done with the shot? This is going to be very important to tie in how your footwork relates to what you're doing with your hips and your knees lifting. So your hips turning and your knees lifting. So when I'm getting to the ball, what you're doing, and this is very natural, is stepping and then waiting and waiting. All right, and then hitting all at once. Instead of just barely getting there, keep your last steps, your feet should be together, and then waiting for the ball if need be. And then as you're waiting and the ball's coming closer, then step in, lift, pivot. Instead of getting there, stepping and waiting. See what I'm saying? So when you're moving to the ball, the feet are together, 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 and then step in, lift, pivot. Instead of apart, 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 and then.
Do it correctly once more.
Together. You see that the last move I make, Frank, my feet kind of click together.
Yeah.
The racket back and just kind of tuck it. Well, yeah, it's getting up a little too high. And a lot of times, you know, you're running out to the ball with the tip of your racket pointing out here, and then as soon as you get to the ball, you jerk it back, and that
really tightens up your arm, and it's real hard to have a relaxed pendulum when your arm is jerking back the last second. So get it back, point it back to the back curtain the whole way out to the ball with your left hand back. Ready? Just, no, keep it just like that. Point it back. Keep it just like that all the way out to the ball until you hit it. Even there, you move it all the way back. And don't move it from there until it's time to swing. Same thing. All the way back, all the way sideways. All the way sideways. There you go. We'll leave it there until you get there. Very good. Oh, what is that good? There you go. Ooh, the last two are super. Again, all the way back and sideways. Leave it there until you get there. That's it. All the way back. Leave it there until you get there. A little bit more movement there. Move your arm. Try to get it back. Get the end, so we're going to hit like three or four more balls, and the point here is to see if you can hold your follow through at least, let's say we're going to have 4 more balls. Hold your follow through, be balanced at least 3 times out of 4. Let's see if you can do that, okay? In other words, you're going to hold your follow through, just freeze for 3 or 4 seconds after each shot, right? That's it. Try it again. Get that pull. Hold. Right. Pivot a little bit more on that front foot, 2 more, hit and pull. Notice where your head was there. Your head's facing me. There you go. Okay. Good. It's a lot better. Now, that was, everything was perfect there. You didn't quite get that front foot around, so we're going to try 3 more. Right? Yeah. Okay. When you start to feel like you're horsing with your upper body, activate those knees. Go ahead. Work with those knees for a second without a ball. All right? Okay, it's a little simple. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
You're rolling? When you're hitting the ball, you have to realize what your objectives are, even though they may seem obvious. First of all, there's net errors, long errors, and wide errors. We want to develop a stroke that will allow you to lift the ball over the net to decrease your net errors, but we'll also put topspin on the ball, so the ball will be hooking into the court, decreasing your long errors. We'll talk in a second about decreasing your wide errors. So basically, I'm going to be patterning my stroke after a pendulum, which is a very consistent motion. And I want to catch the ball. Let's just see how that looks as a pendulum. I want to catch the ball as my racket is not moving downward, but as it's moving upward. And you'll notice here that my top edge is leading my bottom edge, so that I'm going to be getting the topspin on the ball. So catching the ball on the way up with the string slightly tilted forward is the key. Now, how do I get my hips around so that I can drive that pendulum towards the target and upward? Well, I've got to work with turning my hips. How do I turn my hips? I work with my knees and my feet in this manner. Bending and lifting and picking up the synchronization between the upper body pendulum and the lower body, accommodating it with the dip. When the pendulum's at its lowest point, my knees are at their lowest point. As the pendulum starts to lift, my knees start to lift and turn, and this turn is what allows my body to get out of the way of my arm traveling at the target. How do we control wide errors? Wide errors are usually caused by moving the shoulders too much, too early, in this type of fashion. So first of all, we have to work with our knees and our feet to keep the shoulders from overworking. But what types of things very specifically do we work on to get rid of wide errors? Well, you've got to keep the head still and keep the hands together. So the best way to work on that is to work on keeping your arms together and keeping your head down on where the ball was. And in that way, you'll be decreasing your wide errors as well. I don't know how good of a summary that was, but that would be where I left it.